Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya elected by the people of Kenya. And I have no apologies to make to anybody. And I want to tell those public officers using those offices that soon, and very soon, we will call them out. They must stop the nonsense they are engaged in of making telephone calls to people, to leaders, blackmailing people left, right, and center. If they are men enough, let them come forward and face me.
In the highly acclaimed and criticized book, 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, the very first law reads, never outshine the master. Do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite in spite, fear, and insecurity. A classic example of the intricate balance of power between the president and the deputy. One sets his eyes on his legacy as he finishes his term. The other focused on cementing his position in what's commonly termed as premature campaigns. Back in 2013, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, through their respective parties, TNA and URP, came together, a unity that catapulted them on a joint ticket to the echelons of power. Then trouble started during the second term, from a surprising handshake whose unifying message was questioned, to ideology battles of legacy and succession, to assassination claims, followed by claims of government officers undermining the office of the DP. The list of the red flags between these two principles is on the increase. Has Ruto been sidelined? Was it his own doing? We explore these questions and the political implications brought along. Welcome to The Big Story. My name is Jesse Rogers. Tonight, we question whether truly DP Ruto is out in the cold and the implications that might actually have. Let's just bring in our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, who's set to have a conversation with the Kikuyu Member of Parliament, Ishungwa, who is a fierce defender of DP Ruto. It would be interesting to get his take on this particular issues that have played out in recent past. Let's listen in.
Deputy President Dr. William Ruto is a man under siege. This, according to him, saying the system, how he describes it, is what is after him. Several issues, of course, have made news in the recent past, from just recently the death of a police officer, Sergeant Kenei, in his office over this allegedly fake arms deal that has seen the former Cabinet Secretary Sports, Chesa, face charges on the same. However, out of that particular issue, there's also the BBI process for a long time not seeing eye to eye with what has been a popularization of that document going on around the country, led by the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. And on that, he's argued the former Premier is using this process to campaign, early campaigns for the 2022 elections. But outside of that, more glaring perhaps is a division within the party, the Jubilee Party, where he's a deputy party leader and the president, the party leader. However, they always, both of them, when asked, will say all is well. But is it? I have with me Kikuyu Member of Parliament, Ishungwa Kimani, to talk more about this. Thank you for making time for The Big Story. Is the Deputy President under siege, according to you?
Well, he said it, and he said he's not a madman, so he knows what he's speaking about. And he told you is the people who call themselves the system, who are not only undermining his office, but deliberately have orchestrated a campaign to also malign his name. And you remember this started right after the 2017 elections. In 2018, it started with a social media campaign. We know, because many of these people are people I worked with myself during the campaign, in communications for the campaign team. And a number of them were deployed in an office along Wood Avenue, and paid through party and state resources by those who are in the system, apparently. And when they started the fight on social media, we spoke to some of them, and they were kind enough to divulge information, at least to me, that we are being fought because we follow William Ruto. That escalated from social media, maligning of names on social media, to being tagged as corrupt people whenever you are seen with the deputy president, to business people being targeted, politicians being targeted. And it moved to a point where now it came to outright threats and intimidation. You remember about a year ago I made a report which was never investigated over death threats. People who are not even hiding their numbers, calling you and telling you, we will kill you if we see you following Ruto again. Those reports were made. I'm not the only member of parliament, quite a number. It moved from that to now arrests. You are arrested with all manner of charges. If they don't get anything, they will frame up something. And eventually, remember, it came to the talk about the Lamada meetings on threats to the life of the deputy president. Ask yourself, Sophia, what happened to those allegations? What investigations were carried on? All we saw was DCI arrest a blogger in the name of Dennis Itumbi, take him to court on a letter, some purported fake letter. So they said, and he was taken to court. If you have been following that case in court, then you know it was all hogwash. What happened to the veracity of the allegations of the threat to life to a person not less than that who holds the office of the deputy president? Nothing was investigated, and that matter was muted at that point. So when William Ruto tells you he knows what he's speaking about, when he tells you there are real and credible threats, he knows what he's talking about. Yeah. The desperation that we have seen with our friends, the so-called system people, the desperation is palpable. And they have tried all manner of things. Indeed, I will tell you, and I did say very soon, if they don't kill us before, we shall be divulging all this information to the public. Yeah. We have information as to why certain elite squads were dismantled by the DCI. We have information on how they came to form a leaner group after they discovered part of their plans were leaking. We have information that there are people who have been meeting every Friday somewhere. So when the deputy president says he is not a madman, and I also tell you I'm also not a madman, I have never been one. Yeah. We know what we are talking about.
For your constituent in Kikuyu tonight watching you, and of course other Kenyans, when you talk about the system, some could understand what this means, but break it down to Wanjiko. When you talk about the system, they're thinking, this is the deputy president, the second in command. Who is the system?
The system is a cabal of, or a coterie of people within government who believe that they can, they think they are God, or they are that system that determines what is to happen in all our individual and collective lives in the country. And in fact, they openly call you and tell you, you will see what the system will do to you. The system will destroy you. The system will jail you. The system will finish you. The system will sponsor people against you in your constituencies. So I don't need to name names, but I think if you did your homework, Sophia, you will be able to know who are these who purport to be the system. And
what then perhaps would be worrying for many is that this system and these people who are after the deputy president, as you say, and he has claimed as well, then have the explicit support or at least backing or nod of the president himself. Because if the deputy president has come out time and over again talking about the various issues, and yet the president has not said, okay, we need to deal with this. He is quiet and silent on these issues. So in your view, is all of this happening with his express permission?
I cannot second guess the president and where he stands in all this. But I'll tell you, a lot of people misuse the name of the president. I have had occasion to speak to the president. At a time after the threats came to me, I had occasion to speak to the president. I expressed my concerns to the president. I expressed the feeling that we were being fought, apparently because of following the deputy president, and the president was far from it. Therefore, it's people who misuse and abuse their state
Mheshimiwa,
office.
the buck stops the president. So are we saying he's a lame duck president? There are more powerful people in his government who can go amok. His deputy is saying his life is in danger, not the first time, not the second time. And he says, no, it's not me. We don't know who they are. Really? Kenyans outside will believe that he's just innocently sitting back and there are these forces that he cannot contain.
Nobody has said there are forces that he cannot contain. But I'm telling you, people do abuse their positions in government. Of course, the president has the honors to have investigations done, and I'm sure with time, maybe he will do that. I am not privy to any information as to whether, and I don't know how government operates. I've never been in mainstream government myself, so I don't know. But from where I sit, I will tell you that people do abuse their positions in government. You just look at the recent case in point, the case you mentioned of the arms scandal. Yeah. Ask yourself, two Wazungus jet into the country. They are booked into hotels. They are meeting people in and around town. They happen to report that they are being conned by a group of individuals. These individuals are only arrested 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes after leaving the deputy president's office. You never ever hear anything again to do with the so-called foreigners or business people. You have not seen in the cases that have been taken to court their statements. You have not seen their complaints. You have not even seen these people. Nobody has investigated how these people got into this country. What was their mission getting into this country? Nobody bothered at a time that we are telling ourselves that we are fighting corruption, that people can walk into a government office, an investigative government office like DCI that is charged with the responsibility of fighting economic crimes, and confess to the DCI that I was bribing people to be able to get a deal in government, and no action is taken. Two, you get people who are telling us, DCI is telling us that there are people in regard to the ongoing investigations, which I don't want to comment much about because they are ongoing investigations and I hope they'll be able to tell us. But I'm shocked at a time when many of us are depending on our mobile telephony even to transact our financial transactions, and a lot of our data now is online on our phones. That the DCI is telling us that somebody had the means to be able to delete data from the late Kenai's phone. Safaricom, and I will tell you it is Safaricom because the late Kenai, I knew him personally and I had his number. We communicated often. He had a Safaricom line, an active Safaricom line. I have seen a report in your own newspaper, The Standard, Safaricom people saying they have not been contacted by DCI. But DCI, on the other hand, is telling us that somebody was able to delete data from Safaricom system. Yet Safaricom are not aware. So, therefore, you can look at the contradictions. If you look at the contradictions of what has been going on with the DCI, you see a scheme, as the deputy president said, to malign his office and basically just to make him look bad in the eyes of the public.
Yeah. And we'll await investigations, and the matter is before court as well. But talk to me about the issue of the system and whether he actually believes he can beat it, because he says his life is in danger. It's the officers who are supposed to protect him. Now, the one leading and heading part of that team in terms of the DCI and all that, he's castigated him time upon number and says he's perhaps one of those with an ulterior motive, allegedly. So can he beat this system that is coming after him? Or is it time to perhaps say, let me leave this institution, Deputy President, resign and fight my battles from outside? There are those who said perhaps that way then he'll be unleashed of the yoke that perhaps he carries.
Sophia, let me first tell you for the record, and I don't need to even consult William Ruto on this one. William Ruto resigning from government, a government that he was elected in. William Ruto was on the ballot paper, being elected as deputy president together with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Therefore, that one is out of the question. Him resigning is out of the question. Of course, that would be the prayer of the people fighting him. They had hoped that, in fact, they were telling us in 2018, early 2018, they were telling us by 2020, we will have pushed William Ruto to the point of leaving government. But let me tell them for the record, William Ruto is going nowhere. If you expect William Ruto to leave government today, then government ceases to exist as it is.
An impeachment?
Bring it on, baby. Tell them to bring it on. And come, baby, come. Tell them to bring it on. You would have to dissolve government and allow the people of Kenya to elect a new leadership with the coalition you want. If there is a BBI coalition, you want to form into a coalition and have a new government under the BBI coalition. I know there has been talk about that. Don't look for shortcuts. Go back to the people. Ask for the people's mandate and a new coalition. But as it is, the people of Kenya, by a majority of votes, voted for William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta as their president and deputy president. And they have a mandate to govern this country for the next 5 years. After 5 years, then anybody who wants to run can run.
So can he then beat the system? It's said to be powerful, well-connected, tentacles across all manner of offices and institutions. Can he?
I'll tell you why it is called the system. Is because it's a cabal of cowards who cannot face you. That's why I believe he told them to be men enough and face him. They hide behind this thing they call the system because they are not strong enough to be able to face you. That is why they want to hide behind something they call a system. But I think we have a bigger system and a bigger network of Kenyans supporting William Ruto and supporting us in the cause that we are on. We have many Kenyans who believe that this country can be governed properly and leaders can be elected irrespective of where they come from, irrespective of their race, religion, or creed or tribe. And that is the aspirations that the Kenyan people want. And they see, they're inspired by William Ruto, have been one of them. And therefore, if anybody wants to fight William Ruto, be man enough, face him on the ballot, or woman enough, and face him on the ballot in 2022. If you want to face him earlier, then the easier route is to those who, like Senator Orengo, he can ask his ODM members to all quit, force an election, a general election, and we can get into an election and they can come up with their coalition. Otherwise, this thing called the system is neither here nor there. As I told you, it's people who cannot be able to face you. And because what they are doing is evil. What they are doing is not in the best interest of either the state. It's not in the best interest of the people of Kenya. It is for their own selfish ends. That is why they don't want to be seen. They want to remain faceless. But we will be exposing them.
So when do we expect this? Is there a timeline of, is there something that's going to give and then you will come out and say, this is the evidence we have, these are the individuals, this is the scheme? Because perhaps when Kenyans understand better, then it will be for the information of Kenyans to be able to have a full picture of what's going on.
We of course have to be also cautious on the timing of what we do when or what information, because we also want to give them an opportunity to redeem themselves. We want to give them an opportunity to do what is fair and just to Kenyans. And if they push on, we will only tell them, like somebody said recently, for every action there will be an equal measured reaction. Yes.
All right, well said. Thank you very much. Kimani Ichung'wah, the Member of Parliament, Kikuyu constituency, saying at the end of the day, the Deputy President is going nowhere, and says those who would want him out, if it's an impeachment motion, bring it on. But that at the end of the day, the case here that is being put by those that are claimed or alleged to fight the Deputy President is that Kenyans, when it does come to that time to decide, they will decide. For Wanjiku right now, Jesse, the most important thing is service delivery. The various challenges every ordinary Kenyan is facing, they want to see that addressed, as opposed to the politicking that literally has gone quite high in terms of the political temperatures around the BBI and all of that. Is it down to what Wanjiku wants, what Wanjiku needs, or is it just about the political class and their ambitions? We'll wait to see how all of this plays out in coming days, Jesse.
Oh, many thanks, Sophia Wanuna, right there with Kimani Ichung'wah. So there's nowhere the DP is going. He was elected in this particular government, and he is actually determined to serve the whole term. So come, baby, come. And that's how we started. Caleb Kositani, MP Soy, joins us in studio, as well as William Kamket, who's a Tiati Member of Parliament. Waheshimiwa, thank you so much for your time as we get to deliberate on whether he truly is isolated or it's a case of one being a renegade. Let me start with you, Caleb Kositani, as we perhaps bounce off the remarks made by Kimani Ichung'wah. Allow me to ask, I mean, when we have the second in command raising questions about his security, about an alleged plot by the deep state on the extrajudicial means to scuttle his presidential bid, how should we read into this? Is this a man under attack or man feigning or playing victim?
Well, Jesse, thank you. I think the DP is a very sober leader. He's been around for quite a while. And I don't think he knows what he's saying. He's not just speaking out of turn or speaking for the sake of it. He's got facts. Remember the first time when the DP mentioned about the Lamada meetings. Those Lamada meetings stopped almost immediately because they were exposed. And I think they retreated and went to re-strategize. You know very well that some people have been selling this narrative that the DP trying to associate him with corruption. And they've tried that for so long, but it has not changed the minds of Kenyans. It has not in any way filtered the support that the DP enjoys across the nation. So I think the DP was right to speak up his mind. Those who are meant to listen and hear his cry or his concerns have heard. And we expect to see a difference in how things are going to be done from now onwards.
All right, even as we expect a difference, allow me to engage William Kamket. Still on the same question, I mean, the DP does sit in the National Security Council, or he's supposed to. So when questions around the security and integrity of his office are raised, I mean, are there any other avenues to raise this? Is he just playing a victim, or is it a plight, you know, to elicit sympathy? Because many might argue from both sides, yeah?
In my view, I'm even surprised that by now the DP has not been invited by the cohesion team to come and explain what he meant, because what the DP has done, he has demonstrated that he's actually a threat to national security, because his manner of speech is so reckless to the extent of causing a lot of anxiety among Kenyans. So I would expect that National Cohesion and Commission should be preparing to interview the DP in order to tell Kenyans what he actually meant. Because even in as much as the DP is trying to play the sympathy card, we have no election next week. We have no election next year. Why is the DP playing the sympathy card 2.5 years to elections? Which elections are we talking about? Which elections is he talking about that people or this so-called system wants to stop him from contesting? It should be, what we should be listening or hearing from the DP is him launching development projects and implementing the Jubilee agenda. But the gentleman has gone berserk, and he wants to, you know, bring Kenyans in the entire country in the election mood 2.5 years before. And so, I don't know, he's shadow boxing, he's fighting imaginary wars, he's a man under siege. So that mentality of siege, that exists in his mind. He should not drag the entire nation into that mentality.
All right, you've raised a very important point, bringing the country into an electioneering mood. I mean, the BBI has been criticized, especially by those allied to Deputy President William Ruto, that is just a vehicle that has been hijacked in order to push or to hijack the craft of ODM in 2022 lineup. Let me pick your mind, Caleb Kositani, because on one side, the DP is castigated on actually politicized or politics, premature politics. On the other side, the BBI is being castigated for using that platform for political agendas. What say you?
I think, Jesse, you have all the clips of the BBI stroke ODM rallies that have been held, up to the one that was recently held in Meru. And you can see clearly that during the meeting they had in Kisii, Kakamega, Deputy President was part of the agenda. In fact, he was a major agenda in Kakamega, from the likes of Atuoli and many others in that gathering. I think the President, His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is my party leader, meant well when he shook hands with Raila, and when he came up with the idea that we have a Building Bridges initiative so that we may build real bridges like the one he built with William Ruto in 2013, and that saw them get into power. And I think it's out there for all to see that the ODM stroke BBI rallies have been meetings of people who are just out there to go and talk about other people. And remember, they said, small minds talk about people, but the great minds discuss ideas. So I think there have been a lot of small minds gathering in those meetings. And it's until when we sat as other members of Jubilee and like-minded parties, when we met in Naivasha, and we decided that we are supporting BBI, has launched in Bomas, and we are going to attend the meetings. And when we attended the Mombasa meeting, not a single person raised a word or tried to insult William Ruto. Same thing in Kitui, that happened. And even in Meru, they did that in Meru when at least the crowd had left and listened to the people who were speaking sense. So I think if I were the President of the Republic of Kenya, unfortunately I'm not, I would have stopped these rallies. Because what are the rallies for? And yet there is nobody who is opposing BBI. What is this popularization of a document that has been accepted by everybody? You can only read one thing into these rallies. They are meant to drive political, to gain a certain terrain, political terrain, so that come 2022, ODM will have a story to say, we are the ones who did this, we are the ones who did this, and now let's turn BBI into a political party, and we swing with it in 2022, which is also okay. But leave William Ruto to do his work, leave William Ruto to also seek the people's vote like any other person, and let's practice real democracy. If you are genuine about the handshake, you shook hands with the Jubilee government, because Uhuru is not an individual. You cannot say you shook hands with Uhuru and you are working with Jubilee but minus William Ruto. There is no separation of the two. Remember, when we voted in 2013 and 2017, we voted for a pair.
All right.
Yeah, so that's where we are.
Okay, I'll definitely come back and pick the sentiments of William Kamket, especially on that BBI issue, but also whether the DP is actually being isolated or this are the fruits of what he did before. He's actually isolating himself. So let's take that short break. We'll be back with the big story after a short while. Do stay with us.